What better purpose for music than as a gentle rekindling of emotions so long ago experienced and so deeply enjoyed? I am indeed a musician. I relate these 5 true stories with the knowledge that music possesses the absolute power to comfort the soul. For me, this epiphany struck in the last year of my parents' lives. My father suffered from all variety of physical ailments, my mother from the mental ravages of Alzheimer's disease. Struggling against all odds to remain together in life, they found solace in the gentle rekindling of emotions so long ago experienced and so deeply felt. With the relentless and unavoidable pursuit by age and disease, memories disappeared quickly, but the emotions of music never died. What I couldn't have predicted was their reliance on my own music, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It gave them comfort, until no more time remained. As anyone who has lost both parents will confide, you suddenly feel like an orphan. The pain of loss may fade, but 2 large holes remain in your heart forever. How do we who remain attempt to fill those crevices? My own revelation surfaced with a simple question: what better purpose for music? That's when I decided to share my gift of music with people who needed it the most. People like my parents. I found them in senior citizen communities, memory care facilities, nursing homes, and homeless shelters. Desperate for momentary escape from loneliness. Hungry for the soulful comfort that only music can offer. Truly, I have received far more than I have given of myself. I know you'll understand this ultimate truth as you hear the stories I'm about to share with you. The clarinetist. I didn't notice him in the rear of the hall, sitting with his daughter, I would later learn. My performance this day would be at a seniors community specializing in memory care. The lesson I was about to learn would prove startling. You see, never having performed at such a facility, I was understandably nervous about the people with whom I was about to share my gift. Would they be able to grasp the very nature of my modern electronic performance? Would they all simply fall asleep before I played a note? Would anyone recognize any songs in my repertoire? Sure, in these performances I featured the music of the 1930s, 40s, 50s, and 60s. The great songwriters, Cole Porter, George Gershwin, Harry Warren, Duke Ellington, Billie Holiday, and yes, even the Beatles. To my surprise, a crowd of 100 people awaited their free concert, all dressed in their Sunday best. As I set up my equipment, they sat patiently, watching my every move. Several asked if they could help me, and asked again, and yet again. I chuckled with those close enough to endure my corny jokes. Not corny to them, funny. They laughed and wanted more. No closed eyes yet. The beginning of a show is the toughest for any musician, wondering what to expect. But I began, as usual, with a short verbal introduction. Who I am, what I'm doing here, what music I'll be playing, a brief description of my EWI, electronic wind instrument, and the teeny tiny musicians contained within my iPad mini. Yeah, they got it. Mostly. I began with a song from 1927, a song now known as the most recorded song ever written. When you hear this song, I teased, let me know if you recognize it. I saw it in their eyes, the memory of a song so long ago experienced, the rekindling of emotions so deeply enjoyed, now tumbling through often damaged minds. Tears flowed, first from them, then from me, and I reveled in their gentle rekindling of emotions so long ago experienced and so deeply enjoyed. For the next hour, we journeyed together through their songs of life. They applauded after each one, enthusiastically. Those who could stood to let me know their appreciation. They held hands, retreated to their past lives, remembered as best they could, searching for the partner no longer sitting at their side, realizing they were now alone, yet together. When the concert ended, most remained seated, seeming to enjoy watching me dismantle my electronic gear. Many asked questions. Some were led back to their rooms by caring staff members. As I walked towards the door to leave, one lovely lady, unable to get up from her wheelchair, waved her hand in a gesture meant to ask if I would spend a moment with her. When I arrived at her side, she was wiping tears from her eyes. "Jeff, I could tell just by looking at you when you came through the front door today that you possess a gentle and kind soul." And I was certainly right. Thank you for sharing your gift with us today. It made a difference in our lives. The activities director who had invited my performance approached me with the broadest smile on her face. "I can't thank you enough for performing for us today, Jeff. Everyone enjoyed your music, but most of all, they enjoyed you. This is a rare treat for them. Did you notice the old gentleman in the back of the hall, sitting with his daughter, holding hands?" I can't say that I did," I responded. "He wanted so much to talk to you. He's been a resident here for many years. He often tells us stories of his years as a professional clarinetist, performing on the road with some great big bands of years past. I know your performance was very special for him. He couldn't stop talking about the instrument you play. What's it called again?" "The iwi," I answered. "Well, to me it actually looks like an electronic clarinet. Anyway, I've never seen him smile as much as he did today, especially when he saw that clarinet. I have no doubt he saw himself in you and wished he could perform with you. Next time you play here, I'll make sure to introduce you to him." "Sure," I agreed. "I'll look forward to it." A week later, I received a lovely email from her, telling me how much everyone enjoyed my performance, but her last sentence caught me off guard. "I'm sorry to have to tell you that the clarinetist died the day after your show. He spoke non-stop about you and your talent after you left that day. It was his time. You should know that you made a difference in his life. You allowed him to remember who he was and wished he could still be. That is a rare gift." We've all seen him before, in movies perhaps, or in our nightmares. On this day, I was performing at a rather large facility, literally on an auditorium stage in front of a few hundred residents. As was customary, they already were seated long before I arrived, waiting for the promised rare treat of live musical entertainment to begin. When I signaled my readiness, a nurse scurried up to me, asking if one of the residents might be allowed to sit behind me on stage. "Sure," I agreed, looking forward to the company on the lonely platform. She smiled and retreated behind the curtain to gather the man on the ceiling, and I immediately recognized him from our inevitable nightmares about senility. He was old, very old, loose strands of white hair hanging from a blistered head, sucking incessantly on toothless gums, dressed, so to speak, in a backless gown, no sense of modesty here, old leather slippers on his feet, sitting in a wheelchair, looking up, staring at the ceiling, eyes drifting left, then right, then left again, staring at the ceiling. The nurse placed his wheelchair behind me off to the side, near one of the speakers that would deliver the sound of my music. "Don't worry, he won't bother you," she said. "He's not only blind, but nearly deaf, too. Maybe parking him here will at least allow him to hear you." I looked back at him, staring at the ceiling, sucking on his gums, eyes shifting, searching. For what, I could only wonder. Following my usual pattern, I began with verbal descriptions of who I was, why I was here, and what I would be performing. The audience was very attentive, as they always are. Once or twice, in between songs as they applauded, I stole a backward glance at the man on the ceiling, still sucking his gums, looking at the ceiling, eyes shifting, searching. Midway through the performance, I announced my next selection. And now, with your permission, I'd like to play a song I'm sure you'll remember well, Tenderly, a lovely melody written so many years ago by that popular Chicago bandleader and pianist, Walter Gross. Applause, before a note had even been played, already remembering a song they knew so well. I closed my eyes, as I so often do, allowing my feelings to flow from my unburdened mind. And as Tenderly continued its journey through time and space, I experienced the deepest sense that something extraordinary was happening, unseen to me. I opened my eyes in mid-song. I focused on the nurse standing in the back of the auditorium, tears flowing down her cheeks, fingers steepled to her mouth, body shaking, staring at the man on the ceiling. Others had noticed too, now standing to watch, many shaking their heads in disbelief. Following their eyes, I turned to look back at the man on the ceiling, looking up, eyes shifting, searching, lips moving. Startled, I stopped playing. You could have heard a pin drop. Silence. As if a giant vacuum had sucked all sound from the hall, save the gentle sound of the man on the ceiling, singing, tenderly, word for word, alone in his mind, unburdened by reality, reveling in the gentle rekindling of emotions so long ago experienced and so deeply enjoyed. At the conclusion of the performance, as all the guests were led back to their rooms, the nurse approached the stage to gather the man on the ceiling from his spot behind me. "In all the years I've been here," she whispered, "he's never spoken before. Never. This is truly a gift, one that you've shared with him and with us." I looked at him, sitting there, words now spent, sucking on his gums, staring at the ceiling, eyes shifting, left, then right, then left again, searching, searching. For whom? The Ballroom Dancer. I was performing this day in what looked like an old ballroom, complete with hardwood floors, chairs lining the walls, wheelchairs, that is. Like always, they had been waiting for me to arrive, unable to hide the excitement of live entertainment. You know the routine by now. Set up, corny jokes for those close enough to hear. When ready, begin the show. Talk about who I am, why I'm here, what I'll be doing. Introducing them to my 21st century orchestra. It's teeny tiny musicians contained within my iPad mini, demonstrating the EWI. First it was a clarinet, then, with the push of a button, a trumpet, a flute, a piano, every possible instrument responding to my touch. They listened intently. They applauded, often, enthusiastically, and sat immobile, until one brave soul possessed the courage and strength to stand, shaky, unsteady, wheelchair pushed to the side. The activities director hurried to her side, held out her arms in the posture of a dancing partner. The old lady accepted the invitation, smiled, laughed, then took the lead position in this dancing partnership. Cheers and applause filled the room, and the song I was playing? Oh, how we danced! Several other ladies gathered their strength, stood, and danced with each other. wanting, needing to be part of this moment. And I played on, until everyone was too tired to continue, except two, the old lady and the activities director. They whirled, they swirled, and they laughed. A smile never left the old lady's face. She was out of breath, tired, but she never sat down until I concluded the show. Everyone stood and applauded, laughed along with the couple still on the dance floor. The old woman finally collapsed into her wheelchair, clearly needing the rest. The activities director merely hugged her, long and hard, not wanting to let go. After the performance, she approached me, wheeling the old lady over to meet me. The director spoke first. "You know, Jeff, Irene here had a long career as a ballroom dancer. She and her husband actually owned an Arthur Murray dance studio back in the day. But this is the first time she's been out of that wheelchair in far too long a time." "I can't believe how tired I am," the woman laughed aloud. "But it felt so good to get up and dance again. I haven't had this much fun in years." "Well, we'll have to do it again, soon," I joked. "I can't wait. How about tomorrow?" The gentle rekindling of emotions so long ago experienced and so deeply enjoyed. A lost man. What an interesting community this was. Independent living, assisted living, memory care, all housed in connected buildings on a community campus. I was invited to perform at their annual Christmas party, where all residents and their families would dine in the large common dining hall. When I arrived to set up, the party was already bustling pretty well. The staff had prepared quite a spread of food and drink to accommodate a variety of tastes. Relatives strolled from table to table, happy to see each other once again after a year-long separation. I set up in the lounge area next to the dining hall so as not to disturb those wishing to eat and talk without the intrusion of any musical distractions. I began my performance in a different way, by necessity. Since all the residents and guests were by then seated in the dining hall, there was no one to tell corny jokes to in the lounge. So when the clock ticked 6 p.m., I just began, by myself. As you might expect, it didn't take more than a song or two for stragglers to migrate over to the lounge, where they seated themselves comfortably. One gentleman caught my attention right away. Frankly, he didn't look as old as the others, and he was dressed to the nines, as they say. My first thought was that he was a business owner, here to spend the evening with friends and relatives. Soon there were a few dozen people in the lounge, listening, watching, smiling, talking. A few even danced. A good time for all. The gentleman suddenly got up from his seat and started looking around the room, frantically, looking for someone or something. He wandered away, followed, I noticed, by a nurse's aide in uniform. As more and more people ventured into the lounge, I used the opportunity to pause my performance. A perfect time to finally begin with my usual introduction. You know the routine by now, right? Who I am, what I'm doing here, what music I'm playing, what instruments I'm playing. Better late than never. As I returned to the music, the gentleman reappeared, still accompanied by the nurse's aide. He sat back down, still looking around. Eventually, he was again captivated by the music. Sometimes, people have a tendency to tell the musician, "It's too loud, turn it down." But not this night. "Turn it up, we can't hear you." Wow, that's a pleasant surprise. Then again, more than half the audience was probably deaf. As the hour progressed, the gentleman disappeared and reappeared several more times, always looking around, always accompanied by the uniformed aide. By the end of the show, the dance floor was full, as were all the seats in the lounge. The gentleman now sat enraptured, despite his obvious confusion. Once finished with my performance, I decided to leave my equipment set up. I just had a funny feeling that I needed to talk with the man, and that he needed to talk with me. "Hi, I'm Jeff," I announced as I held out my hand. He offered his hand in return. "I hope you enjoyed the party tonight." Yes, I did, but, well, I'm afraid I'm a little confused." "Oh, don't feel bad, we're all a little confused," I laughed. Yes, but, well, I can't seem to remember anything. I'm not even sure where I am right now." "That's funny. I'm not too sure where I am either. But at least we know we're confused, right? That's more than some people can say." He just sat there, looking into my eyes, not sure how to respond. The nurse's aide had a most unusual look on her face as she listened to our conversation. "Are you a preacher?" she asked politely. Her question caught me off guard. "No, I'm not," I replied tentatively, searching her eyes for a clue. I'm sorry," she said. "I didn't mean to embarrass you, but in church this past Sunday morning, our preacher delivered a wonderful sermon, and what he said was almost exactly what you just said." "Really?" I asked, looking for further explanation with my raised eyebrows. "Yes," she answered. "He told the congregation that all people on this earth are damaged. Some of us know we're damaged, others don't. But we're all damaged. We all need help." I was speechless. Unusual for me, I'm afraid. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that my experiences performing had taught me that same lesson, though in different words. "You know," I told her, "your pastor is so right. Hearing his words, spoken by you, I'm reminded why I enjoy these performances so much. They're very therapeutic for everyone, including me." At that, she smiled, took the gentleman by the hand, and walked him back to his room. Perfect time for me to pack up my gear and head home. Before I could, though, she walked back to speak with me, this time without the gentleman at her side. "Your music helped him immensely tonight," she confided. "I'm so glad. Thank you." "You see," she continued, "this is his first night alone, his first night here. But sharing your gift was so important for him. As you saw, he's very confused, but at least he knows he's confused. He just doesn't know why. Yet." She hugged me gently before returning to her duties. I had so many questions flooding my thoughts. Had his wife just recently died? Or had she placed him here, knowing she could no longer care for him alone? Then again, did the answer really matter in the scheme of things? Women without a home. Our grandchildren never cease to amaze us. "Papa, we're volunteering next Friday night to provide meals for homeless women. Why don't you and Nana come too? She could help in the kitchen. Maybe you could play some music." This coming from our then 13-year-old granddaughter. Her 10-year-old brother, our grandson, would also be helping out. "Sure, that sounds good. Give me the details," I answered. I emailed the woman at the church that was sponsoring this event. I didn't know it at the time, but there was an ongoing program to rescue homeless women from the streets, especially at holiday time, and more especially in cold weather. A citywide network of churches alternated weeks, offering their gymnasiums for sleeping, complete with cot beds and bathrooms, and their kitchens for cooking the meals that would be served by kids like our grandchildren. This concept blew me away. Wonderful for the women who needed the help, just as great for young kids learning to help others unselfishly, not to mention their moms who would spend their day gathering the food and cooking the meals. The woman called me right back. "That's a great idea, Jeff. We've never had music before, but I think it would provide a much-needed morale boost, especially at this time of year. Can you start playing around 7 o'clock? That's when we'll be serving dinner. And can you play some Christmas music too? Absolutely. I'll be there a half hour early to set up. See you then. This would be my first performance for the benefit of homeless people. As I've mentioned to you before, a little nervousness always invades a musician's mind prior to showtime. We all have visions of homeless people, especially homeless women. You know, bag ladies, they're often called. Mentally ill, dangerous, the dregs of society. The closer the event, the more I worried, especially about the youngsters who would be serving the meals. At such a young age, were they ready for what they might face? Were they up to the challenge of treating others as they themselves would want to be treated? After all, isn't that what they're taught? At least in the classroom. But what about in real life? Cass and the grandkids, together with other volunteers, spent the day in the church kitchen preparing meals. I had it easy, arriving at 6:30 to set up. There were dining tables and beds for about 75 assembled in the church gymnasium, and of course a long buffet table, loaded by then with more food than you can imagine, all cooked, ready to serve. The guests arrived around 5 minutes before 7, busily unpacking their backpacks and claiming their cots. They were visibly nervous, not sure what to do next. So at precisely 7 o'clock sharp, I started playing. The women took that as their cue to line up at the buffet tables, and as I performed, I looked at them, looking at me. Smiles, conversation, easing of tension, and then it hit me like a ton of bricks. They looked, well, just like my wife or my daughter. No different. All colors, all ages. Some looked older, some more tired. Others looked like your favorite high school teacher. You know, the one you can never forget for caring about you. Midway through the meal, the kids came out from the kitchen to clear the tables. I confess, as I tell you this story right now, I'm wiping a tear or two from my eyes. No fear, no hesitation. They walked right up to each table, smiled, engaged the women in conversation. Before I even realized it, the kids were sitting at the table with the ladies, taking selfies, holding their hands, helping them, being helped by their attention in return. I have never been so proud of my grandchildren. By 7:30, dinner was done. I thought the ladies would simply get up from their seats and retreat to their cot beds and conversations. I couldn't have been more wrong. They stayed right where they were, listening to my music, laughing at my corny jokes, to the chagrin of my grandchildren, singing along with the Christmas songs. Yes, there were some tears for lost families, lost jobs, lost opportunities, lost youth. I have another confession to make, if I may, and I admit this to anyone who asks, why do you do this? I'm selfish, I always answer. I get more pleasure from these performances than my audiences ever could. Yes, these are the best audiences any musician could wish for. They listen, they appreciate, they perk up, they smile, and laugh, and cry, and applaud too. More often than not, standing as they clap their hands enthusiastically, unafraid to let you know they appreciate you. At the end of the hour, one homeless woman approached me while I was packing up my gear. She introduced herself, shook my hand, a stunning young African-American woman, no more than 30 years old, talking about her years attending college. Got her degree, well-spoken, literate, eager to communicate. You know, I'm as surprised by my present circumstances as anyone. I never expected or wanted to be homeless, but like so many other women here, I faced a hurdle I couldn't jump over. So here I am. I know I'll get over it. I know I'll return to society where I belong. But in the meantime, this is an important resting point, a time and place to regain my strength and my confidence. And your being here, sharing your music, proves to me that there are people who care. I won't let them down. Or you. I promise. All things happen for a reason, though we rarely know that reason. For me, this whole experience has taught me important lessons, many of them about myself and my family. Mostly, it's a way to remember my mother, Mary Resnick, such a vibrant and loving person. Growing up in our house, she was always singing or whistling, despite the many challenges of her life. Music was her salvation. It kept her sane, I'm sure, and happy. The last few times I saw my mother, she didn't remember me, didn't know who I was. "Hi, Mom," I would chuckle. "Do you know who I am?" No." "Oh, that's okay. I'm your oldest son, Jeff. You know, the musician." "Oh, hello. Nice to meet you."